Hey, hello, and welcome back to Naturally with Karen. This is Karen, and today on this particular video that I'm doing live, unedited, uncut, no makeup, real me, real wise woman, elder, shaman, and medicine woman, is all about your aura. Now, I began learning about the aura in 1965 from my maternal grandmother. And while we sit down and reason, please keep in mind that when you're learning from a real authentic shaman, medicine woman, you're not going to be learning like you do when you sit down in the doctor's office or you go to an institution called school. You're going to be dealing from someone who's been up and down and had lots of life experiences and lessons and insights and many, many decades of learning from animals and trees and nature, Mother Earth, and learning about the importance of sustainability, learning about how we heal. Not every shaman is a medicine woman. As we take our journey today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on my own recycled glass container of nettle leaf tea. I'm an herbalist and I went to American School of Herbalism in Santa Cruz. I was a solo mom in the year 2000. My son was born in 95. So he was about 5 years old when I had to bring him along, and I wanted to bring him along, although it would have been ideal if he would have had another parent at home, which was my plan. So my son got to learn a little bit about, Zawa got to learn a little bit about herbalism as well. So this is nettle leaf tea, and the reason that I drink nettle leaf tea after becoming an herbalist, and I don't have any sweetener in it today, is because it's going to impart a lot of minerals, and those minerals are going to help you. So as I'm pulling my hair back, if you followed along, you'll find out I'm regenerating me. You see pictures where I had long, beautiful dreadlocks until November. This is June. So not even, but 6 months ago, I cut them off, and I'm going to regenerate my hair and my body, because you are also going to go through a lot of experiences in your life. It's not going to be one smooth sailing journey. You're a spirit inside of a vehicle. So just as I was explaining with my son yesterday, and we were driving back from Duluth together, and I said, just like we are sitting in a vehicle right now, we're sitting in my Subaru Outback together, and I've got I've got the steering wheel, and I'm driving us home, and he's in the passenger seat. I said, you got into the door and you sat down in the vehicle. Your spirit, whether you want to say it's 28 grams or 2 ounces or whatever it is, all these experiments that were done to weigh the spirit aspect of you that leaves your body when you enter death, right? And death is a whole nother subject. I have so much medicine I want to bring to you, and it takes courage to get onto the screen. It takes organization to think about how to, years and years and years and decades of medicine. Where do I start and what do I bring? So I figured that today I would speak about your aura. So as I was speaking with my son, I told him, you got into this vehicle, and that's how your spirit is also inside of a vehicle. So you want to keep this vehicle running good, your water pump, your battery, your fluids. If you don't add water to your car or coolant, right, your car is going to overheat. It's not going to function well. And that's why you see people in the wintertime in Minnesota with their windows open and they're sleeping, talking about how hot they are. And you go to your gynecologist and they tell you that hot flashes are just a normal part of menopause. They're not. Hormonal fluctuations certainly do happen, but not at the magnitude, think earthquake, that we see them today. So we see all kinds of issues. And what I want to do is break them down one by one so you can start to over and inner stand. We use the word understand most often. What is really happening? Now, I realized about 30 some years ago that I really, really didn't like the name New Age or alternative medicine. I also didn't want to be relegated into the witchcraft category because, well, been there, done that. As a person who was extremely young in her early 20s and being raised the way that I was, which I now realize was absolutely out of the ordinary. It's absolutely foreign to most people who were raised under a lot of very, very deep religious, conservative, and frankly, female minimizing paradigms. So I want to dispel, that's why I want to use that word sound really carefully. I want to dispel that actually this is not New Age, and I want to explain that there is a person who's actually been out there who has made sure that this is science, it's measurable and everything else, which wasn't my role. It wasn't my role in this particular life that I have. Maybe you could help me quiet fires out, please, so I could do this. Go out there and just kind of tap on the window. So starting in 1965, I was born in 1961 in San Francisco, California, to a very young mom. She was 18, and her mother, who was born in 1918 in Carrick, Minnesota, Etna. And Etna took our family, my mother, when she was born in 1942, and she moved the family from Minnesota to Kansas City, Missouri. I'm gonna see if we can get the dog to be quiet here outside, so I was gonna quiet him. And then she moved the family all to California. They ended up settling in Livermore, California, which is exactly where my father's family came from, West Virginia, and out to Oakland, California, and then into Livermore. So that's how I became someone who was raised in California. Now, my grandmother was a real devout student of parapsychology. She lost her firstborn son the same year I was born in 1961. And she also had a really keen interest based on the fact that her own mother had come over to America from the German and Prussia area and was about a 14 to 15-year-old girl who was married off to a much, much older man in Carrick, Minnesota. She also carried the old ways that were given to Etna. Etna gave them to my mother. My mother gave some to me, but it was mostly my maternal grandmother who recognized that it was every so many generations that we would note that the sacred chalice, the female in the family, would have very strong, very pronounced abilities or being very, very tuned. And sometimes this happened because of a trauma. If you went to a modern day and a very new infantile type of study, psychology, right? And I've taken a lot of psychology in college, physiological psych, psychology of addiction, general psychology, Don Johnson, West Valley College, lots of places. You would say that the psychologist would say that if you had been traumatized or dissociated, that you would begin to learn about some of the older, through some of the older centers of the brain, the more reptilian area, the hindbrain. So psychologists know, including Dandy Allard in Duluth at Duluth Psychological Associates, who mentioned to me that there's a lot of study, ongoing and long-time study, that where children have been exposed to trauma, and now today that's most of our children. We'll get into that in other videos because I get too tangential. Most of our children have either gone through inappropriate touching, a removal from the home, traumatization from bullying from certain teachers, not all teachers, don't jump on the bandwagon. But attachment issues, we start to find it normal for our children to just go off with other people when, Rudolf Steiner showed us very clearly that there's an etheric, which is what we're going to talk about with the aura. There's an etheric body, which Barbara Brennan identified as the first energetic body that exudes from your physical body, okay? The baby and the mama have a very, very strong etheric body connection for 3 full years. And since I had read Steiner, and since I had been raised the way that I was from a very young child, 1965 forward, I noticed even when I had my own son, who I planned for several years before I had him, and intentioned and prayed, and asked for and prepared for and cleaned my womb and envisioned how I was going to raise him and how the home we were going to have. And he was always going to be with his parents or grandparents and never in stranger care. And he was going to go to Waldorf school. And even though we can lay out the very best plans, it doesn't always happen that way. So our child is very etheric, and they'll even urinate and have bowel movements around the same time as mama. They feel a lot of the same feelings because while you see a physical umbilical cord, the child is still connected through an unseen connection through the etheric body. So in 1965, my grandmother said to me, "You need to be able to see the aura." And I said, "Well, what is the aura?" Here I was 4 and 5 years old. My grandmother knew from carrying that old wisdom from her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother before her. It was carried through the women, not the men, for good reason. Okay. Women are higher estrogen. Women are much more intuitive because of their estrogen, because of their copper content. Okay. So we knew, we feel, we are much more sensory organ. She said, "You need to learn about the human aura." So being a very little girl, I said, "Well, what is that?" She said, "You have an energy body that's all around you. You know it when you go to pet the dog, or when you go outside, or when you interact with a flower or a tree. You go outside and you look up into the sky and you feel the weather. You can go outside and many people will say, I feel like it's going to rain." And since I got rid of my television 35 years ago, I am less dependent on checking for the weather as I am to feel, to sense, to keep that sensory ability. So she would say, "Here's how you're going to do it. You'll soften your gaze." So I'd say, "Well, like this," and I would kind of exaggerate it. And I would, just like you would be looking at one of those pictures where there's a hidden image underneath it, and you kind of have to really kind of tune your gaze out so you're not just looking with your physical eyes at just a logical world. So that's what I did. As she practiced and practiced and practiced with me. And pretty soon I remember I would go to school and I would say, "Oh my gosh, your aura is really yellow or orange today." And people would go, "What's that?" Right? And I would get a real negative, like, "We don't do that." And so grandma said, "Let's just not talk about that." Right? Because what was really happening was that we were being taught to be much more submissive. So as our families have all of this pain today, they've got diabetes and they've got cysts and they've got autoimmune and they've got cancers and they've got this pox and that pox and Lyme's and all these different things going on, right? It really is very, very simple. But in order for you to be much more submissive and to turn it over to the doctor telling you what it is and what you do about it and what medication you take, what pharmacy, or you might pick the pharmacy. You've got that ability. But you need to take the first step, and the first step is to learn how to sense your energy. Now, since I know from a great deal of experience leaving Santa Cruz, California, and arriving in Minnesota July the 1st of 2002. And not just Minnesota, because I love the Twin Cities, and many of those areas are super progressive and wonderful. But I ended up coming where a lot of the family from grandma's sister's family was, in a little teeny tiny city called Cloquet, Minnesota. And I, as a 42-year-old woman at that time in 2002 with a small 6, almost 7-year-old son, was absolutely shocked. In fact, I was horrified because as I walked around with my herbs, I was asked if I was drinking moonshine because sometimes it was a clear decoction, and I'm an herbalist. I got slaps on the back because I'm tall and because I worked in law, and I was, and when I went to rent my first shop at a place called Hair Dynamics on 14th Street, and they had a room so that I could start doing bodywork, massage, energy, wellness consultations, as a shaman and a medicine woman, um, one of the gals that was there that was renting to do massage spoke with the owner of the hair shop, Danita Himela, and she said, "We're not going to have any New Agers in here," because I simply said, "I like her energy." So I have a great deal of experience coming from what I consider to be almost at that time the mecca of being really, really the sort of the top of my game, if you will, in terms of energy and intuitive work and medium and all that. And popping into some of the stores, like we have a really reduced or a much more limited version up here in Duluth that sells candles and flags and stuff and does angel card readings. Well, we had a lot of those shops in California for a great many years, and it was about 25 years ahead of where I arrived in Northeast Minnesota. So I thought, well, my goodness, this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to parlay out being someone who had gathered so much, but I found a lot of resistance. Okay. So when I explained about the aura, when I gave the insights that I saw, it was met with rejection, probably 9 times out of 10. And it caught me off guard, and it really made me feel really sad. So Barbara Brennan is someone that I started reading in 1982. She published a book called Hands of Light. And what sets her apart from me and many, many other people is that she has a doctorate in both philosophy and theology. Now, I could see if she just had a doctorate in philosophy, but here's a woman who was born in the 1930s, much like my father. So she's an elder to myself. And she also worked for NASA. She's an astrophysicist. She has a doctorate of philosophy and theology. And so that kind of takes her out of being thrust immediately into the witchcraft lane or the New Age lane, because she started empirically proving that we, in fact, have energetic bodies that radiate, extrude from our physical body, and that she could actually measure them, being a person in academia and the professional and the world of NASA, right? So the world of science had no other choice but to accept an elder woman who would come and document, and she began training students in the work of energy healing. Now, this is what my grandmother was teaching me from the early 1960s or the mid 1960s forward, was the aura, to soften my gaze, to do the billet reading, to do the scanning, always with my right hand, to do, So I never wanted to go take a Reiki or a healing touch, because this is something that I have built upon for many, many decades. And I didn't want to overlayer it with something that just felt a little more institutionalized, a little more like a modern day program and a response. There's always a call and a response in life. Okay. So I'm going to put my glasses on. Barbara Brennan is remarkable because she was able to prove. Okay. So I have myself several philosophy courses at San Jose State, Philosophies of Asia, University of California, Santa Cruz, Capitalism and Nature, and West Valley College, as well as Mission College, Phantom Limb Theory, and things like that. And I love philosophy, and I'm so thankful for Barbara Brennan because, and she's alive today, because the work that she's done is beyond phenomenal, and it's actually qualified the work that a lot of other people have gone on to do, so that we can't just be thrown in the witch or the new age or the alternative or one of those categories, okay? So what she did for women, and I found this when I did a Google because I wanted to have the language right. I didn't want to speak about her respectfully in a way that wasn't true. So you can Google and find this yourself, this part. She created a language, just like English was created. The structure, the grammar, the sentencing. She created a language so that people could understand what energy is. So that language describes energy and energy systems. So a lot of people know energy systems as chakras, as portals or vortexes of energy. I actually see the colors so that when I'm running my hand over or I'm remotely working and sensing with someone, and again, this cannot be discounted any longer, as much as there's been put downs and scoffs and charlatan and new age and magical thinking and everything else. This is real. It's as real gets. It's as real as walking a dog around a patient on a table and the dog sniffing out spore cells or precancerous cells long before a doctor can pick it up on a very efficient and deficient blood serum testing. Okay, so she created a language. Hands of Light was her book, and this way more people did not fear coming out of the closet, if you will, and saying, hey, I helped so-and-so heal as part of their journey with energy work, because it's real. Now, real meaning. The real meaning of aura, the word aura, if you break it down into A-U and R-A, the aura, right? It actually means to breathe or breath. And so, like I said, when I go out and I sense the weather, it's the breeze or the breath, right? You can feel the breath of the earth, the respiration from the trees and the wings of the birds and the flowers that are blooming and blossoming and the people that are around and the energy that they're emitting. So the aura, as the energy body that's all around the body, especially around the head, because the head and the heart are so largely electrical. And so that electricity is measured by the doctor. So it's non-refutable as an EEG or an EKG, an electrocardiogram, right? They measure the electricity coming out of you, but it's not sophisticated enough as our long, long ago ancient of ways, meaning people that lived a long, long time ago. I want to break this down because I could speak in the most esoteric, extremely deep, and I want to build us to get there and not make it be so intense that it's not understood by a great many. The idea is to build, because I want to take you there, but I want to start with some steps, okay? And so building around with the story of it all. So if you were to look up aura definition, we're getting very Googled. We're getting very Googleized in the world today. I worked in Silicon Valley. I saw, the internet blossom. And so now our future children's children will be dependent on asking for the answer. What does this mean? What do I do with this, right? It'll be a very manicured, sterilized, institutionalized way of living instead of a very connected with nature living. And this is the problem that is driving us into the machine people call artificial, or have called artificial intelligence, AI. This is what I'm very, 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 very much against, for good reason. Okay, so an aura is also a sensation, okay, preceding a seizure or a migraine. People will say they kind of had the aura with their eyes, right? Before they had a migraine, they started to see the aura around people. Just, it was an uncomfortable feeling that their head was going to hurt. So if you think about a migraine or a seizure, both of those two events that happen in the vehicle have everything to do with your electricity in your brain. And what affects the electricity in your brain? What's making the seizure or the migraine happen? What's making the aura change into a cloudy aura, which is what I would see if this was happening for someone and they were going to be going into a seizure within a half an hour or a migraine, and they were on my table having a session with me, is I would see a very, very cloudy aura with a lot of spots and a lot of things in it, okay? And I say things because they're different shapes and they move, and it's almost like what you would see when you look under a microscope is what I see in my far eye. And I've explained this with people for many, many, many years. So as a shaman and a medicine woman, I feel, sense, touch, remotely and in person, and you can too. And it just takes listening and learning, practicing and developing, and you will be able to do this too. And to be able to do it is to not usurp God. It's not to usurp your doctor. It is really to gain a better understanding of yourself, understanding and overstanding, and to be able to sense not only yourself, but all of your surroundings. So there's not a day that goes by that, say, for example, last night I come home, I've been watering my garden at the Duluth Community Garden. I have a plot there. And I open up and there's 3 email reports that have come back from the lab with hair test reports. I do hair tissue mineral analysis. You can order your own profile too at naturallywithkaren.com. It's all done through the mail, except we can't do addresses in the state of New York. And one gentleman had very, very elevated mercury. One had extremely low copper, and the other one had extremely high tin. Well, why did they have those things? This is what we find out in coaching. I find out, what about your dental work? What about your diet? Where do you work? Where did your family live? I want to help you as quickly as possible find the real legit reason so that you've got what the world wants today, which is proof. The hair test is going to give you proof. Here, for example, without opening it, is one for my son. So if you order the full package, you're going to get a full 8-page profile and a stapled cover. This one's kind of been, used a lot. You're going to open it up, and on the inside, you're going to see all of your nutritional elements. You think of them as like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, iron, zinc, selenium, boron, cobalt, molybdenum, and sulfur. You're going to see the toxic elements over here on the right. So you're going to be able to see, what's going on in the blood closest to my blood-brain barrier. But what's really, really interesting is, as your doctor / practitioner, I'm also going to get my own copy. You're going to get an email copy. So that way, geez, if you're moving around and you lose your paper copy, you're always going to have your email copy. I pay for both. It's going to show me on there exactly what kind of health trends. So it's going to say the disease names, or how high your depression, your fatigue. It's going to tell me about your adrenals, your thyroid, if you're parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system dominant. So I can help you, because minerals are sedating or stimulating. And I want to know which ones I want to use to make you feel better right now. Not diagnosing, not prescribing. These are over the counter that the lab has recommended on a piece of paper under Dr. Watts's guidance. And I'm able to say, this is exactly what the lab says, and here's what my experience is. Let me help you now also with your diet to get more of that going so you can feel better. Let's detoxify. Does that make sense? That is what's going to help you be a lot more intuitive as well. Now, the word aura, as I said, comes from breath or to breeze. So, think of it that way. Energy itself, yourself if you're on social media, if you've talked with people on the phone between here and Mexico or Jamaica or Africa or something like that, you can feel a person's energy. They don't have to just say, oh yeah, I'm good, everything's fine. But down deep inside, everything is not really good or fine, right? So what are other ways to be able to, so you can start working on your aura, so you can start to sense other people's aura, so you can start practicing today for free. You don't have to go take an expensive course. You can listen to me here at Naturally with Karen, and I will show you how to start sensing the human aura. Well, one way that my grandmother showed me is she would say, you're going to take your hands and rub them together vigorously, really fast, like this. Just do that with me for a minute. Just keep rubbing them. real vigorously. And now you're going to go along your body. I'm just kind of going around my head so you can see me on the screen. But the energy is stimulated on your palms, and you're going to be able to go down your body. What I've done is I was 42 years old, and I had already been doing coaching and healing and body work because I became certificated in 1997 for massage. Being an herbalist was 2000. Becoming a yoga instructor was 2015, but I've been doing yoga for many decades. I just thought I would get the certification to add it to my ability to incorporate that as my medicine and show people. But since I started in 1965, as I would go in and out of a treatment room starting February 1st, 2003 in Minnesota, I didn't have to do this anymore, because once you get practiced, your brain, your mind, your energy automatically gets into a very deep state of tuning. So the minute I go and I wash my hands, I prepare myself, I've done my walk in the morning or gone to the gym, I go into that treatment room and I shut the door and I say, "How are you? What can I do for you today?" And the person might say, "I just really need to relax. I'm really uptight. And I've got a problem with this shoulder. Can you help me with this shoulder?" And they're like, "You just know what to do. Like, I don't even need to tell you," right? If they've been seeing me for some time. I fix their shoulder. We do the energy work together. I can't do it by myself. You're not just a piece of furniture that I'm fixing. It's not just a passive agreement. It's a mutual agreement between two energy systems. Okay? So I'm going in and I do these. So people like Brenda and Elsie and Jerry and Cindy and Carol and all of the clients that come to me on a very regular basis are deeply aware. Brady Slater, who is a writer for Duluth News Tribune, wrote an article several years back when I was at a different location, probably about 4 years ago, I think it was, about his experience on my table for an hour and a half. He equated it to something like a very psychedelic experience. So for some people who are very, very tuned and want the deep level shaman work, that's possible. For people that are very, very closed and guarded and, they're very institutionalized, they're very logical, they're very linear, it's not going to be quite so much. So people have come in and you can tell from the aura, right? If they allow themselves to release and relax, because the moment I use my hands around the clavicle, up here with my shea and cacao and coconut butter, and I start relaxing the individual, the person, immediately I start to draw up images in my arena. And because I did this for hundreds and thousands of hours just in Minnesota, not even the 42 years in California, it scares people. It scares them because 90% of you were raised in religious environments, homes, schools, and you were taught, the traditional Deuteronomy, which is, you don't do these things. You don't, divine. And that's why I want you to know about Barbara Brennan, because she has a doctorate in theology and philosophy. And she has proven that this is a God-given ability, if you will, or you're geared, as I like to say, you're geared to be able to do this. It's a part of your human biofield anatomy. It's a part of who you are to sense the human aura. Okay? All right. So 16 plus years of in and out of a treatment room have led to my becoming an expert, a very, very high level expert that is pretty rare today, as compared to someone that maybe flew off and took a shamanic practitioner course, or someone that took Reiki and, maybe just they've kind of dabbled in it here and there with their friends. it's different than if you're going in and out of a room every day. So maybe for you, it might be that you decide to go get massage training, or you decide to become a coach and you're going in and out of a room with people doing a combination of body work and massage, or just doing energy work for people, which is fabulous. Or you just get a massage chair like I've got in the mudroom there, and people sit down and you help them with just a little bit and a little bit of energy work. You're going to get that practice and that development that way. Okay. So, how do you make it stronger so you can see your aura around your hand? My grandmother would say, take your hand and hold it up in kind of a dimly lit room, and you'll start to see it. Well, now, if you've ever seen Kirlian photography, which as David Wolf has beautiful pictures of in his books about sun foods, right? But they're all over. You can Google Kirlian, Kirlian photography, and you can see the energy pattern around raw, vibrant, real fruits and vegetables, because there's energy exuding from them. There's energy exuding from cows and baby calves. There's energy because of the hormone oxytocin between a mama cow and her baby calf, just like there is between a mama and a baby and a daddy. That's why the daddy is part of a vital process for helping the baby. So, how are you going to increase your ability to see an aura? You can go into maybe a way of working with people where you start like I did a long time ago. And I just volunteered and I would touch people. Or I remember it was Peter Cherney in Santa Cruz in the early 1990s when I was taking African drumming with a whole big group of people he was in, and Bob Kane and Pat Salisbury and Beth Dyer and all these folks in Santa Cruz, that we were sitting up on a hilltop at University of California, Santa Cruz, and learning African drumming with Arthur Hull, 1992. And then with Babatunde Olatunji, and then African dance with Mbayaro for 3 years. And you start to learn rhythm and connection and all these things, as well as my grandmother taught me symbols and bones and cards and billet readings and all of these things. So I was very, very quiet as a child, and very, very, very quiet actually until probably my mid 40s. I just didn't really talk a lot. And so it was a little bit difficult for me to think about coming onto YouTube until I got a lot of pressure. Whether you call it pressure from the ancestors, or pressure from myself, or pressure from feeling that, okay, now I am, in fact, a wise elder. I need to come out and speak this great amount of experience that I've attained through devotion, intention, lots and lots of money being spent, actually, too, because you can't go to herbal school, yoga school, and all those things. And all of that money I earned either working as a paralegal or massaging humans on a table and doing body work and healing people through coaching sessions. I've been coaching 35 years. You increase it and make it stronger by getting out into nature every single day. So before I did this live stream early this morning, this rise, I was out trimming some of the bushes that were starting to get into my gutters and block a window in the back. Sorry to the trees for cutting some of these branches off, but they were starting to really push into the window. And so getting out into nature. The second most important, number one, is getting out into nature to make it stronger. Number two is your way of life. How are you eating? What are you drinking? If you're going to, the convenience stores and you're munching down on prepackaged foods and plastic wrapped containers and, bright yellows and reds and blue drinks and things that we might want on a really rare occasion, that's just fine, okay? But we don't want to be living on them, because what they're doing is, remember we talked about your atmosphere. Your aura is like your atmosphere, right? Around your electrical system. You are clouding. You're making it cloudy, and you're not going to get a good signal. So your way of life is very important. And that's why I encourage you to go back and watch I'm going to turn it into a playlist. There's about 5 or 6 sections called Toxic Brain that deal with addiction, stagnation, etc. You don't want to get cloudy. or in some of the rap songs were insane in the membrane. You don't want to be insane in the membrane. Okay. So number one, getting out into nature. So I was out there today kind of trimming. I'll be out there a little bit later because even though it's June 16th, my housemate left with a jacket on. It's that chilly. I've got long sleeves on because it's that chilly. I was out there kind of cold, but since I was busy doing my clipping really quick, picking up my branches and putting them over there to dry out and hopefully what will be sun in the next couple of days. Hopefully my garden is not going to get too stunted. So number one, nature. Number two, your way of life, your daily habits, how you eat, what you drink, how you go to sleep at night. Sometimes people will tell me, well, I do better staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning and I sleep until 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, you're killing yourself. You're actually killing yourself because you make vital hormones in the dark, sleeping with the moon in a dark room with the telephone and the computer and everything way away from you, unless you've got, an unwell family member, an addicted family member, someone who's out there who could be vulnerable in a car. Get it away from your head. It's also looking for a signal and it interrupts the signals in your brain. I want your brain to be strong so you can sense auras, okay? So my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, which is available, all you have to do is go to naturallywithkaren.com and click on the shop and click on books. The book is right there. Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. Thyroid is our number one epidemic, aside from pain pills and the opioid epidemic, in my mind, is the thyroid epidemic and pandemic, meaning pandemic. It's all over the world. In Africa, it's hirsutism and cretinism. Why? Because people are living in areas that are away from the ocean. They're not getting the iodine. They're toxic. They're eating toxic food products. More of our people are having to eat from the dollar store, from the convenience stores, the Quick Trips, and the Subway sandwiches and all this stuff, and the institutions at the schools, and it's making them cloudy. It's making them have a poor signal. They can't focus on learning about your aura because they're barely trying to survive and keep up with having enough energy to live a life. They're sitting on the toilet in the morning for like 5 minutes trying to take a bowel movement because they're plugged up. If you're plugged up and you're cloudy, don't count on having a great signal. So I know you can do it. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and it's my gift to you. I ask in return that you please subscribe and support an elder with real wisdom and watch where we go with this, because once we get over 1,000 subscribers, which I'm not going to pay for like a lot of people do, I want to do this organically. I want to do this real. I want you to watch me regenerate as I am right now. My eyes, my hair, my body at almost 60. We'll be able to go somewhere. I'll be able to bring that deep, deep level wisdom that I've got waiting to come out and give to you. Okay? So if you have any questions, be sure and just note them, and I will, check back periodically. If you want to order your own hair test, I encourage you. If you go to Naturally with Karen page, my Naturally with Karen page, it's called Naturally with Karen on Facebook, you'll see that I published just 2 days ago a PubMed article authenticating hair tissue mineral analysis. Don't put your hand on these little, things that are electrical acupuncture machines and stuff like that. They might give you a few tidbits, but they're really going to send you home with a bag. They make their money selling you a bag full of supplements. Okay. So real deal. Order the hair test, do your wellness form. It's all at naturallywithkaren.com. You can start reading the book right now. In 1 minute, it's back on your email as a downloadable. Make it big on your screen and read a chapter a day. That's a couple of pages. You'll know everything you need to know to heal yourself. You watch my videos, they're free. I'll take you there for a fraction of the cost, and I'll give you the real medicine. And I want to thank you for joining me, and I want to thank you for sharing this video and liking it, because it shows me you want more. Thank you.